Hi everyone, welcome to Difference Frames the World, a struggling channel to view the world from a different angle. Today, we discuss Japan, which held the 2023 G7 summit in Hiroshima, a city destroyed 78 years ago by the United States with the world's first atomic bomb. It is noteworthy that Hiroshima is also the birthplace of the current Japanese Prime Minister. Fumio Kishida might feel uncomfortable when he saw Joe Biden bring the nuclear briefcase to Hiroshima, even after President Biden reaffirmed the United States' commitment to defend Japan with the nuclear umbrella. For quite a long time, the Japanese want the U.S. leaders to apologize for nuking Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Former U.S. President Obama refused when visiting Hiroshima, nor did Joe Biden. In the past 8 decades, the U.S. has not apologized for destroying the two cities with nuclear weapons in August 1945, and some U.S. politicians are even proud of doing that to end the Second World War earlier and save millions of American soldiers. The Japanese Prime Minister, Fumio Kishida, was born in Hiroshima in 1957, 12 years after America's nuclear bomb, nicknamed Little Boy, nuked the city, causing 140,000 deaths. Fumio Kishida's parents survived. Even though he was born in Hiroshima, the Japanese Prime Minister is physically and mentally healthy compared with his counterpart from the most potent nation in the universe. It seems the radioactivity from the nuclear bombing was not severe enough as most people had expected. Fumio Kishida's long tenure as Japan's foreign minister before he became prime minister helped him expand Japan's international diplomatic space. Since he took office as the Japanese prime minister, he has launched intensive visits to many countries globally. During the 2022 G7 summit, he looked like a nobody, hiding behind other national leaders from other member states. In May 2023, when the summit was held in Japan, he was still under the shadow of Joe Biden. We have often said that Japan is neutered militarily and economically by the US, and its GDP is only 1/5 of America's. It is not an independent country and does not have a foreign policy. It echoes America's voice instead. The G7 summit has become a joke in recent years when fierce competition between China and the US brings tremendous pressure to the world, militarily, economically, and scientifically. No one talks about the so-called Build Back Better nowadays, and all promises from previous G7 summits are nothing more than hot air. Still, China is always on the agenda and is a hot topic, even though the member states did not want to irritate Beijing when publishing the joint announcement after the meeting. Japan does not hide its hostility like other G7 members. Instead, it frequently angers Beijing on matters concerning Taiwan and the Diaoyu Islands. China and Japan have a history of discord for several hundred years, and the latter has not sincerely apologized to China for its atrocity during World War II. Most of today's politicians in Tokyo are the descendants of Japanese invaders who killed millions of Chinese in the 1930s and 1940s. Many Japanese politicians fear that the Chinese may take revenge against them someday, and they regard China as a threat. According to the Potsdam Proclamation and the Cairo Declaration, Japan, as a defeated country, only has territorial sovereignty over the 4 main islands of Honshu, Hokkaido, Kyushu and Shikoku, and some small isles defined by the victorious powers, namely the US, China, the former Soviet Union and Britain. Potsdam Declaration forbids the Japanese to remilitarize for war. It demands stern justice be meted out to all war criminals, including those who have visited cruelties upon captives. Japan accepted the Potsdam Declaration and surrendered unconditionally. War criminals are still enshrined and worshipped as heroes in Japan. The current Japanese Prime Minister, Fumio Kishida, offered a ritual offering to Yasukuni Shrine, which houses World War II Class A war criminals, on April 21, 2023. He did the same in October 2022. Yasukuni Shrine is located in Chiyoda, Tokyo. For a long time, some Japanese politicians and parliamentarians have insisted on visiting the Yasukuni Shrine, which is vehemently opposed by many peace-loving people in Japan and the international community, also leading to tension between Japan and some Asian countries, particularly China and South Korea. Not only have Japanese politicians visited the war-linked shrine regularly, but the Japanese government had also misled its people by allowing the revisions of its history textbooks to deny the aggression when the late Japanese Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe, was in power. Few people in the country know and believe what Japanese invaders had done to China and Chinese people between 1931 and 1945, when millions died. And even today, many deny the massacre in Nanking, where over 300,000 people were slaughtered. In recent years, Japan has been attempting to rearm for the so-called regional peace, and the United States has even encouraged Japan to remilitarize to counter China's quick rise. Japan's national defense budget reached $51 billion, 26% higher than in 2022. Tokyo's military expenditure has been increasing consecutively for 11 years. Asian countries, particularly those enslaved by Japanese militants in the past century, like China, Korea, Malaysia, and Indonesia, are worried about Japan's military expansion. According to Potsdam Declaration, the Allied forces, including America, Britain, China, and the Soviet Union, should occupy Japan after the war and would only be withdrawn when the objectives stated in the declaration were accomplished. From 1945 to 1952, the U.S. occupied Japan instead of a joint army from the Allied forces. General Douglas MacArthur became the real king of Japan then, remodeling the country with American values and converting Japan into a so-called democracy by American definition. Even though Japan has been admitted into the Group of Seven, becoming a Western nation, politically, not geographically, the U.S. still stations its army there. Here comes an interesting question. Does the U.S. still represent the Allied forces to occupy Japan in 2023, nearly 80 years after the defeat of Japanese imperialists? Suppose the answer is yes, and it is still necessary to put Japan under control. In that case, China, Britain, and Russia should also have the right to occupy the country if they think Japan's demilitarization job is incomplete. Notably, the former Soviet Union also signed the Potsdam Declaration afterwards, so its successor, Russia, should also bear the responsibility to ensure Japan is not to rearm for war. The same is true with Britain and China, and they also have the right to station their armies in Japan if they are dissatisfied with Japan's peaceful reconstruction. It is a paradox. If the U.S. did not stand for the winning powers, its occupation would be illegal. It should withdraw its forces from Japan. Suppose it did represent China, Russia, and Britain to occupy the country. In that case, it should have either retreated its army after the reconstruction, or the other three countries sent their troops to Japan in 1952. Britain follows the United States, but Russia and China do not, so they can challenge the U.S. for violating the Potsdam Declaration. They have the historic right to ask the U.S. to withdraw its army from Japan, or they also control Japan militarily if they believe Japan is remilitarizing itself for war. Japan regards China and Russia as enemies, not only because it has territorial disputes with them over some islands, but also for the potential military threats from Beijing and Moscow. If Russia and China want to split Japan with the United States, according to the Potsdam Declaration, Japan does not have the power to say no. Russia has the world's #1 nuclear arsenal, and China has an army comparable to the U.S. on most fronts. However, America's military power is declining and can hardly protect Japan. After the U.S. failed in Afghanistan, its influence in many regions, including the Middle East, has also diminished. Japan does not believe the U.S. forces can protect it, which is one reason why it wants to rearm itself. Americans want to avoid facing Russian and Chinese armies directly, and politicians in Washington need Japan to deter Beijing and Moscow, which is why the U.S. has encouraged Tokyo to increase its national defense budget in the past 10 years. In 1945, the U.S. Army dropped 2 atomic bombs to force Japan to surrender unconditionally, and it succeeded. Washington also kept the Soviets away from Japan and South Korea with the 2 nuclear warheads, which few or no politicians want to emphasize. Joe Biden brought the nuclear briefcase to Japan at the 2023 G7 summit to deter China and Russia, but he could not stop Russian planes and Chinese warships from approaching the Japan Sea this time. Japan's military expansion is inevitable, and the current Japanese Prime Minister does not hide his ambition. In the coming 5 years, Japan will continue to increase its national defense budget, making it the 3rd worldwide, after the US and China only. The US believes Japan is a significant supporter and may even allow Tokyo to possess nuclear weapons, like Israel, in the foreseeable future. Many analysts say that Japan is merely a screwdriver's turn away from possessing nuclear weapons, or has already had a bomb in the basement. The arms race is on, especially in Asia-Pacific, where China has been the imaginary target for many traditional invaders. China has no choice but to play the game. Although its military expenditure is not as high as the US, it builds warships like making dumplings and produces airplanes as if set-free butterflies. The US may instigate a proxy war between Japan and China, encouraging Japan to get involved in the potential Taiwan conflict, turning Japan into another Ukraine in Asia. Taiwan is too small and fragile to weaken Beijing and put Asia-Pacific in chaos, and if Washington's warmongers want to make more money out of arms sales, they need Japan as the cannon fodder. They may also need South Korea and Australia to fulfill their hidden agenda. Chinese diplomats are busy these days, trying to win a better position for China in the world arena. Beijing wants to develop peaceful and harmonious relations with countries around the world, but it has also had to prepare itself for war with the West. When facing robbers, guns and knives are always better than words.